Thank you, everybody, for coming to the Aaron Torres Podcast YouTube page. If you could do me a quick favor, see that little subscribe button at the bottom of your screen? Go ahead, click that subscribe button. Really does help our channel grow, our audience grow, and I really do appreciate it more than you know. So click that subscribe button. Appreciate your support. Now, here's the video that you came here for. You've been following the story of Bryce Underwood because, boy, oh boy, is it very interesting. All right, so let's dive in. Let's talk about this story. It's a day or two old now, but I think it's worth discussing because I do think there's actually been some new twists here, probably in the last 12 hours or so. But so Bryce Underwood, #1 high school player in America in high school football, okay? And by the way, we're approaching National Signing Day. For people who don't follow the recruiting calendar, it's the first week of December. Well, guess what? Today's the last day of October. You don't have to be great at math to know that we're about a month away, about 5 weeks away from National Signing Day. And I say this all the time in college basketball, but sometimes some of the most interesting stuff that happens in college basketball is in the offseason, is in April and May. You know, I call it gossip season. In Spanish, we call it chisme. There's a lot of chisme going on right now. And it's kind of the same right now in college football as we approach National Signing Day. And so to dive into the Bryce Underwood story, here's what you need to know. #1 quarterback in America has been committed to LSU since way back in January of 2024. So we're talking about 9+ months now. He's originally from the state of Michigan. When he committed to LSU, he basically chose LSU over Michigan. You know, I think there were some people that thought maybe could Colorado get in the mix with Coach Prime, whatever. But at the end of the day, he chose LSU over Michigan. And there were a few different reasons why. One, he's been vocal about he always wanted to play in the SEC. To LSU's credit, let's never forget, January of last year, they had just produced a Heisman Trophy winning quarterback in Jaden Daniels and the #1 offense in America. And listen, bottom line, there was certainly some NIL stuff involved. And really, the end of the day, like what you need to know is, and we've said this often, but Michigan's kind of one of those old school, or they have been at least, programs that really has focused their NIL efforts. They have plenty of money, but they've really focused the NIL efforts on making sure to take care of the players in the program more than chasing after high school recruits and cutting checks to high school recruits. And so it was kind of one of those recruitments. There were a lot of factors. There were a lot of variables that kind of went into the favor of LSU being the pick back in whatever it was in January. And frankly, it's really kind of been a quiet recruitment over the last couple months. Just, you know, he's been at LSU. He's helped put together a top 5 class at LSU. They're talented across the board, whatever. Well, I bring it up because things have certainly changed, or certainly at the very least got more interesting over the last 48 hours or so. Producer Matt, pop up the tweet, pop up the report, pop up what we need to know. That is because Pete Nakos, he is all over the NIL scene, put out a tweet about 2.5 days ago that has been confirmed by multiple Michigan insiders and some LSU insiders as well. The quote, "With early signing day weeks away, Michigan is making its best efforts to make a late run at the #1 recruit in America, Bryce Underwood. As the nation's top QB recruit, Underwood is expected to land one of the highest NIL packages of any 2025 recruit." Boy, oh boy, oh boy, do we have something very interesting. By the way, this is the new twist, by the way, and we'll discuss this in a minute. But did you see, Producer Matt, do you have the other one as well? Because Michigan, and sometimes you start to put the puzzle pieces together, had a 4-star kid committed for 2025 named Carter Smith. Well, on Wednesday night, he decommitted for Michigan, meaning the quarterback that was in place decommitted. Now, there's different reports on if he was just frustrated about that maybe Michigan is willing to change its NIL stance for Bryce Underwood, but not him. But either way, there's something going on at Michigan. I have spent really honestly, the reason we're recording a little bit later here on Thursday afternoon, I spent some time on the phone talking to some people in Big Ten country. And listen, all I will say, I don't think anything's done, but where there's smoke, there's fire, and this is starting to get interesting. So why this is especially interesting to me. So first of all, it's not 0%. Okay. First of all, I don't think it gets out if it's at 0% that Bryce Underwood is at least considering this. But a couple things are interesting about this. You know, one, what did I just say about Michigan? This is not a move that Michigan would have made 6 months ago, a year ago, 2 years ago. They have not been anti-NIL. Let's get that clear. They've taken care of their players. But the bottom line is what Michigan has done in the NIL space is basically said, hey, look, we are going to take care of the guys on our roster. How are we going to offer a recruit $1 million or 800,000 or 2 million or whatever it's going to take and not take care of the guys that are in the program that at least up until this year are helping us win national championships? Okay. Like that's where they were as of, probably 2, 3, 4 months ago. Of course, what's happened the last 2, 3 months? Yeah, the season's kind of a trade wreck, right? They're 5-3. They're going to lose to Oregon this weekend. Maybe I'm dead wrong, but I don't think it's going to be pretty. They still have Ohio State on the schedule. I don't think Ohio State's as good as we thought, but that's probably, you're looking at probably a 7-5 season, okay? And so you can't go on like this. And more specifically, you can't go on with the quarterback play and the quarterback situation that they have had. You look at what's going on right now. Jack Tuttle just retired. You feel bad, major injuries, whatever, you wish him luck. But Jack Tuttle retired. Alex Orji, I don't think is the guy. Davis Warren, who's going to start this weekend. He's a former walk-on. So you just don't have the guys at the position that you need. And I think more importantly, and we've seen this a couple times over the last couple years, I don't think Sharon Moore's done a bad job as Michigan's coach. I just don't think he's got a quarterback. But you cannot go into year 2 without a plan at that position. You go into year 2 without a plan at that position, you go 7-5 again next year, you're probably looking at, going into year 3 on the hot seat. And so we've seen this the last couple of years. Just think about some of the quarterback dominoes that we've seen in the portal. I go back 3 or 4 years ago. I remember the day that Quinn Ewers entered the portal at Ohio State, played his freshman year at Ohio State. And I said, well, that's your starting quarterback in Texas next year. And I had a bunch of fan bases tell, no, he's going to visit this place. I remember Texas Tech fans, no disrespect, were like, Torres, you don't know what you're talking about. Why do you hate my school? And I was just like, look, here's the bottom line. Number 1 recruit in America. Texas was coming off a bad year 1 for Sark, and Sark could not afford to not land Quinn Ewers that offseason. I think Quinn Ewers was actually done months before it was official, but that's another conversation. But it was the same last year with Dylan Raiola, Matt Rule in Nebraska. Nebraska's quarterback situation was a train wreck last year. And other than that, they were pretty good. They just couldn't stop turning the ball over. But the defense was good. The skill position guys were fine, but they could not go into this year without a real plan at quarterback. To Matt Rule's credit, he got it done. I think it helped that Carson Beck announced that he was returning to Georgia for another season. But it's the same thing at Michigan. If you're Sharon Moore, you cannot go into next year uncertain at quarterback. You cannot have a season like this going forward. So I believe the NIL stance has changed. I believe they are willing to pay what it takes. And now it's just a question of, can they get it done? I'm still not sold that we're like that far along in the process. I think we're reasonably far along, right? I think if it was 0%, this report doesn't get out. But I will say with Underwood, as far as Underwood's concerned, listen, remember, I'm sure part of it was NIL, LSU, why he committed. But he also has been public again, wants to play in the SEC. Wants to play in the SEC, go to LSU. Obviously, most of the other spots in the quarterback carousel are set. So it's not like he's going to just choose another SEC school. And like I said, he helped recruit a lot of the LSU class that is currently in place, that is currently the number 3 class in the country, or number 4, I want to say. They're behind Ohio State and Alabama. I think they're number 3. So I just bring it up because I don't think this thing is, I think it's certainly an interesting story. And I give Michigan credit because they need an answer at quarterback. But what I think will be very interesting is over the next couple weeks, let's keep an eye on this. Okay. I will note that he has been for months expected to be at next week's LSU Alabama game. Alabama is obviously traveling to LSU. It'll be the biggest home game of the season. And listen, Brian Kelly and his staff are going to do whatever it takes to get him back on campus. Let him know this is where he needs to be. I'm sure a bunch of the other committed recruits will be there as well. What'll be especially interesting, though, does he pop up at Michigan? He's at where he's from, Belleville, I think is like, Michigan fans have corrected me before, but what is it, about a half an hour from Ann Arbor? I think you literally, when you land at the airport and drive to Ann Arbor, you drive through Belleville, which is where he's from. He's from Michigan. record-setting quarterback. Michigan needs some answers at the quarterback position. Don't know if it's done, but I don't think it's 0% either. This is going to be fascinating to follow. Let me say this. There's going to be some interesting conversations about LSU if Michigan does close the deal here. Because, like, you go back to Dylan Raiola last year, it was a tough loss for Georgia, but you still had what we thought at the time was a first-round pick coming back, and you had plenty of depth at that quarterback position. LSU, I think, is largely banking on bringing in Bryce Underwood. If I've said Bryce Young, forgive me. I probably said it 2 or 3 times in the segment, whatever. But the point I'm trying to make is, listen, if they can't close on Bryce Underwood, I think there's going to be some very interesting questions on LSU, but we will see what happens there.